I'm Walter Capone,
And I'm Ralph Dillinger,
and we are
the Democracy Savers. So, Walter, what is our topic today of discussion?
the imbecility of the human race. So, Ralph, what is your take on today's subject?
And our show is how long?
30 minutes.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to do multiple segments on this topic.
I'm not going to argue with you there. Basically, why do we keep doing the same thing over and over again, making the same mistakes, and we keep doing the same thing? We never learn by our mistakes.
That is definitely a tough one, and it's one that's perplexed philosophers for millennia. It kind of makes me recall a recent book that I read a few months back by a philosopher named David Benatar. Have you ever heard of him?
I've heard of him. Is he related to Pat Benatar, the rock singer?
I'm not so sure about that.
She's good.
Yeah, she's good. But anyway, this David Benatar has written that basically the biggest evolutionary misstep was the development of human consciousness, and that basically life is terrible, and that even for people who don't think it's terrible, they're actually underestimating how terrible it really is.
Okay, well, let's get back to our original point. The imbecility of the human race.
Oh, no, now wait, Walter. Let's not go quite that far. I don't want to go that far. I don't think it's the whole human race. In fact, I'm telling you, I think people are overwhelmed with responsibilities. People are working, you know?
Okay. So, I want to make sure I got this right. If I'm working, then I get a free pass to be a stupid imbecile. It's all right. So if somebody calls me an idiot or a moron, I can say, that's all right. I have an excuse. I'm working. Is that your stance on that? It's okay to be an imbecile as long as you're working or you're busy doing other stuff, drinking beer, or everything's a pass. As long as you say, I'm too busy to pay attention to what's going on. I'm too busy to... And look, I'm not the smartest guy. Okay, there's a lot of smarter people than me out there. And I was able to... I have time to look for things, to reevaluate things. Then why can't the other working people who are overwhelmed let's get the violins out? Okay, that to me is not an excuse to be a blockhead.
Well, I have to admit, Walter, since you've taken my thesis and taken it to its, I guess, logical conclusion, I've got to admit, it sounds pretty absurd. I'm surprised.
And that's what you've been doing. That's what you do. You keep saying, oh, well, people are busy doing other things. They have a right to be stupid because they're too busy to watch anything other than Fox News, for example. They're just overwhelmed. They have time to listen to that propaganda. They have time to read right-wing propaganda. And it's not only right-wing propaganda. I would call it the ruling class propaganda. Right. Maybe that's even a better way of putting it.
I think it is.
Okay. They have all the time in the world for that. A lot of these guys are selling a lot of books. People must be reading books. So your argument that they're overwhelmed and they're working hard and this and that just doesn't flush with me.
Well, you do make a good point. And then if we also look at the comparison of some other countries where they just don't seem to put up with a lot of this stuff. I mean, like...
Well, hold on one second. I think in Argentina, didn't they have a vote recently? How'd that go?
Yeah, that is true. Argentina is a little bit of a anomaly in the Southern Hemisphere.
So, stupidity is not limited to us.
I guess not.
It's other places.
It is in other places, okay. I guess, yes.
Let's make that clear.
Okay.
But it's the whole, what I say at the beginning, the whole human race, of which we're a part of.
This is true.
I'm not so sure, looking at especially some of the candidates' ratings right now, that people are really conscious.
Don't get me started on that. I just cannot believe the clown fest of the Republican candidates and the fact that, Trump is still like on top in the ratings.
Farther than before.
Yes, exactly. And, it's kind of interesting because over the weekend I was looking at a newspaper article, and it had a picture of newly elected Prime Minister of Canada, Justin Trudeau. And he was welcoming, the picture was taken at an airport in Canada. And he was welcoming Syrian refugees, and he was mingling with them and taking selfies with them. And I thought, what a contrast between that and the hysteria over Syrian refugees that's going on down here and being capitalized by the Republican candidates, all of them really, especially Trump. And once again, it seems like we could probably learn a thing or two from our neighbors to the north.
But hold on one second. You cannot blame the Republican candidates, because in a poll taken, the Republican candidates are basically where the vast majority of people are right now. So it's not the candidates per se, it's people's thinking. As soon as something happens, that changes people's... Did you ever hear of mob mentality?
Yes.
Sometimes I think that plays in.
I think you might be right.
So how do we stop that?
Well, maybe by what we're doing right now might be making a dent in it, perhaps.
Very small. Very small dent. Because the people, we aren't going to convince anybody. I'm beginning to believe that we're not going to convince anybody with common sense talk, or anyone else for that matter will be able to convince anybody with common sense talk. The only way you convince people of something is you have to start them out and work on them year after year, and you use certain catchphrases.
Right.
That's how you get people into this. Very popular in Germany back in the late 20s.
Yes, that's true.
Early 30s.
Well, you've been hearing about the comparisons that are being made, between Trump and Hitler. But you're right. I mean, the people themselves bear responsibility for it. But I also, sometimes think that maybe, people are so overworked and with other responsibilities.
Hold on a second. You're making excuses again for people. Okay? You're making excuses for people. How about, bears in the forest are overworked too. They have to look for food all day. So I don't buy that argument that you keep making over and over again. People are too busy working. Everybody works.
Yeah, that's true. But then again, you've got these think tank organizations that are always trying to, create all kinds of subterfuge and confusion and misrepresent things. And I don't know. Maybe it's just my natural disposition to want to give people a little bit of a benefit of the doubt, but...
Well, that's, I think, where you're going wrong. You're giving people a benefit of the doubt. The fact of the matter is, common sense should play a role.
Yeah.
And that's what it seems is missing today. And I told you before, I distinctly remember telling you that Trump was going to go up in the ratings.
Yes, you were right.
I said, what's going on is going to boost Donald Trump, and Ted Cruz is coming up now.
Yeah, he is.
And, he seems to be kind of on the same course as Donald Trump. And I'm not even talking about immigration or any of that. I'm talking about a lot of the other stuff. It's the other stuff, the economic issues that I'm more concerned about. And I can't figure out, like, people like us.
Mm-hmm.
And, we're pretty low on the totem pole.
Definitely. You can't
Okay.
get much lower than us.
How can people like us think that a guy like Donald can or even wants to help the average working stiff?
Yeah.
I mean, for years he's benefited from the labor of working stiffs.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not talk about how many times one of his corporations declared bankruptcy,
Right.
where he indeed actually stiffed some folks. So I think we need to take a good look at that.
Well, Walter, why don't we switch gears here now and talk about the Democratic candidates?
Sounds good to me.
Now, I have to admit, I have quite a bit of respect for Bernie Sanders. I'm not too keen on Hillary, although I will say that I'd rather see...
How about Marty O'Malley?
I like Marty O'Malley, but I don't think... In fact, I could argue that I like his position on most issues even more than Sanders, but I don't think he has a shot.
Uh-huh. And you think Sanders does?
Well, you wouldn't know it from the mainstream media, but he is drawing big crowds at his, when he comes into to local areas, he's drawing some big numbers. Is Bernie Sanders perfect? No. Do I agree with everything that he stands for? No. I'm not really too keen on his, some of his foreign policy positions, especially regarding Israel. He's pro-gun. I'm not too big on that, but I do think he's the best thing we've got going for us right now.
And he's painted as a socialist, which I don't see him as a socialist, not a socialist that I would consider a real socialist.
No, he is part of the establishment, I hate to say, and I would not consider him as a real socialist either, because socialism is actually the means of production are owned by the people, not by the government. So, he's not really a socialist in that respect, but he does want to, raise the minimum wage. He wants to try and reduce the wealth gap. And he's a populist, is a good way.
With a well-regulated capitalist system, though, you should be able to do the same things. It needs to be well-regulated.
This is true.
Where did we get off with the idea that if you deregulate everybody, everything's going to be fine and everybody's going to do the right thing? Where'd that come from?
Well,
when did people ever do the right thing on their own?
That's true.
Overall.
That's one of the big faults of the capitalist ideology, is that, people will do the right thing and the market will...
Well, that's the fault of unfettered capitalism. Now, regulated capitalism, well-regulated capitalism, should work.
And it did work. It worked in the United States.
It seemed to work for a long time.
Yes, it worked with the New Deal. But what we need to explain to our listeners is the fact that even though it took maybe 40 years for it to really come into fruition, the ruling class had began to work on dismantling the New Deal almost as soon as FDR was dead.
Of course.
Yes, through various means and so forth.
And they succeeded.
They succeeded. Finally, their plan came to fruition pretty much with the beginning of the Reagan term.
Revolution.
The Reagan Revolution, yeah. So, we did. We had a well-regulated capitalist system under Roosevelt and the New Deal, and even into, maybe the mid-'70s.
Yeah, Johnson.
Yeah, exactly.
Nixon, even
Nixon, yeah.
I have no problem with Nixon. I mean, Jerry Ford, I had no problem with Jerry Ford either. I was around back then.
Sure. Uh-huh. I think what happened though is it was during that time, coming out of the Great Depression, that basically what Roosevelt said he did was save capitalism. He went to the ruling class and said, "Hey, look, we could have a revolution on our hands," and of course that is not something that they wanted. And so he said, we need to set up these programs like Social Security, like a minimum wage, a 5-day work week, things like that. And we need to put people to work if the private sector isn't going to do it. And, about half of the ruling class went along with them.
And minimum wage has been, at one time, it used to go up. And the argument, and I get so irritated with this argument, that the prices will go up. If you pay people a livable wage to flip burgers, your hamburgers are going to be too expensive. Or your apples, if you have apple pickers that are making minimum wage, your apples will be too expensive. No, they won't. It might cut into the profit margin of the folks who are running the farms, etc. Because I don't have to buy an apple.
Right.
I don't have to buy a hamburger. So it's a farce. How come people believe this stuff? How are people so easily because if you can't live with a job, if a job doesn't pay you enough to live on, it ain't worth having the job.
I would totally agree with you on that.
If somebody has to work 80 hours a week, there's something wrong.
I agree.
So raising the minimum wage, and didn't they just do that in Seattle not that long ago?
They did.
Did all the businesses leave?
No. In fact, the economy in Seattle and in Washington State in general is quite good.
Are the prices that much higher there? Now, I don't get to Seattle.
That's not what I've heard.
You haven't heard that?
I haven't heard anything about the price.
So, in other words, I go to a fast food joint, not to mention any names, and I buy a hamburger in Seattle. I'm not going to be paying all that much more than I'm paying here, correct?
No, you won't be.
So then, if they can do it there, why can't they do it here?
Well, I do believe that people are finally getting smart to that argument.
Who?
Well,
who is?
I don't know. I think you see more movements and more strikes and people out there demanding a minimum wage increase.
But are they getting it?
Well, some are. Unfortunately, many aren't.
I have one other thing to say about Sanders. When he says, our Republican friends, our friends across the aisle, well, speak for yourself, okay? Someone is trying to take food off of my table isn't my friend. And that is something that has irritated me for a long time. And it kind of proves my point about being part of the establishment.
Yeah, I can't really argue with you on that. That is true. And that kind of irritates me as well.
Now, how about Alan Grayson? Congressman Grayson running for president. But he's a little bit too crass, I guess. Although Chris Christie doesn't seem to be.
Good point, Walter. Good point. Well, anyway, I want to say a little bit more about. I want to say a little bit more. Why don't you have another cigarette?
I'm all right.
Okay. The whole idea of socialism, and really what socialism is all about, is it would be basically. What are you doing?
Well, I'm gargling. Go ahead, keep talking.
Oh, okay. Well, socialism is basically what would be considered as like worker co-ops, which is have you ever heard of the Mondragon Corporation in Spain, for example? It's the largest worker co-op in the world. It employs I don't know how many thousands of people, and everybody is an owner of the company. There's no CEO. The decisions are made by the people in a democratic, horizontal way.
Sounds like a pretty good idea, actually. One candidate we haven't mentioned yet.
Oh, who?
Jill Stein.
That's true. But, she doesn't have a chance.
There you go. She doesn't have a chance. Do you agree with what she's saying?
Oh, I do. In fact, I would say I agree with her even more than I do with Bernie.
So here's the problem, okay? You're not going to vote for somebody who you agree with in more than Bernie Sanders, but yet you're not going to vote for her because, well, for one thing, the media says she doesn't have a chance, and she's a third-party candidate. So you're willing to vote for, and I want to make sure I got this right, you're willing to vote for one of the two parties, the main parties, the Washington folks. You're willing to vote for them, and you like Sanders the most. But let's suppose and Sanders is marginally better than the other ones, I would say. Okay. But he's still a part of the structure. Okay.
Right.
So you're going to vote for a marginal candidate, whereas there may be a candidate that is 75% better than one of the mainstream candidates. You're not going to vote for them because they don't have a chance to win because they're in a third party. And that's the kind of thinking I'm talking about. If everybody thinks that way, a third party will never have a chance. That's number one. And number two, I think Hillary is already anointed the Democratic winner. So what are you going to do, write in Sanders?
Yeah, that's true. And it would appear that Hillary has been anointed. Yeah, you're right. Well, there's this whole idea, and I guess to a certain extent, yeah, I'm guilty of it, Walter, that you don't want to throw away a vote, and you'd rather vote, for someone that maybe you marginally like, or even that you don't like, but you're voting for a lesser of two evils, instead of voting for someone who you do like. And yeah, Jill Stein is like, I'd be hard-pressed right now at this moment to even think of something that I would disagree with her on.
So you bought into the propaganda that you're throwing your vote away by voting for, let's say, the Green Party.
I guess I have.
And that is...
So how do we get around that? How do we...
By not buying into propaganda, and if everybody says, I don't like these other candidates, I'm going to vote for a third party, then maybe a third party would have a chance to win.
Good point. This is another reason, folks, why the democracy savers are here.
So the question I have is, how did we get to be so stupid, so dumbed down?
Yeah, that is a very profound question, Walter. I mean, I would guess there's probably not one single answer, but I would definitely say that one of the biggest contributors to the dumbing down of people is a lot of this tripe on television. I mean, like, for example, the Jerry Springer Show, for example. Or who's that other clown? Oh, Maury Povich.
Yeah, compared to those shows, Hee-Haw's intellectual.
Absolutely.
If I was watching one of those shows for a week, I think I'd be going...
Yeah, and that's actually... I just don't get it. And then the question comes around to the fact that, okay, back in the 60s and the 70s, because we were both around then, they didn't have programming like that. The programs were more wholesome, they were more intellectual, they were more... I don't know, is this some kind of a deliberate thing? Is it life imitating art, or is it the other way around?
I think that the TV pushed the envelope, and let's go to the deregulation again. And look, I don't have a problem with people watching certain shows. I mean, I watched shows that back in the 70s were probably considered envelope pushers. But now, today, they'd be on Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, the things have gotten bad, and it seems to me like the folks who, of course, own the TV stations, corporations, I should say, that own the stations, what's in their best interest to keep the American people stupid, because if we're stupid, busy watching some of these dumbbell shows, we're not going to be thinking. And it seems to me like that's where the problem is. I think that the TV, and in general the media, okay, with the deregulation of media, there's no more standards, and we're only talking about over-the-air media right now. I mean, the stuff you mentioned is on regular antenna. You put an antenna up, and you can watch those shows.
Right.
Those are the programs, those are the stations that should be, in my view, since they're over-the-air, a little bit more intellectual, a little bit more substantive. Okay, the programming should be a little more family, wholesome oriented,
right,
than what we're getting today. And it's like we started getting stupid shows, and it's happened, to my view, probably in the 80s. been going downhill since. Now I can't even watch anything that's new now.
I can't either. I watch very little television. And you know another thing that really irritates me, and this is television that's supposed to be, to a certain extent, intellectual. As you know, I'm a big fan of history, and I used to like to watch the History Channel, and on occasion I still do. But I've discovered that this situation has even reached the History Channel to the point where there's very few shows on that channel that are related to history.
Well, that's like music television. At one time it was music videos.
Exactly.
Now it's, I mean, if there was this channel like MTV back when I was in high school, I just can't picture anybody would watch it the way it is now.
Right.
I mean, when it was music, that's a different story.
Right.
Then it was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
So they put on MTV, then they come up with MTV2 to put the music on. Now it's nothing but, and you remember VH1.
Sure.
I mean, is there music on there?
No, there's not. There might be for a few hours a day, but it's mostly
yeah, I think in the morning you
yes.
could get. Yeah, maybe in the morning. But
so it's to the point where I, like you, I can't hardly watch television. I mean, I have to. You know where I get a lot of my entertainment is on YouTube or something like that. Which, by the way, folks, you can also watch the Democracy Savers on our own YouTube channel. Let's get that in.
I want to clarify something. They're going to actually have to listen to us on YouTube because we just actually put a picture there because it's audio and a picture because we can't have a camera that can withstand us being on. That being said, we've been away for quite some time, and we are back now. We're going to try to be a little more regular with these. We're going to try to put up a rant probably every week after everything gets under control. And I'll be heading out of Dodge.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you're heading out of Dodge soon.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll probably be... I'm not sure if I'll be leaving next week. It all depends on a situation. But anyway, if not, we'll do another gig next week. If not, when I get back. And, of course, we've done some upgrades with the equipment. We're using some different equipment now. And we've also changed our location.
We have indeed changed our location.
So hopefully we'll be around a lot more regular.
Yeah.
There's certainly enough to rant about.
Oh my gosh, there's plenty to rant about. I mean, we'll have enough material to keep us doing shows for a long time to come. But yes, like Walter said, we'll definitely be more regular, and we will get our programs posted on our YouTube channel, which, of course, like I said, you really listen to. But there is a picture there because YouTube requires some type of video content.
And what's the picture going to be?
I don't remember. What did we use last time?
I have no idea.
I don't remember. I got to go back in and look. But it definitely will be. It won't be a picture of us because again, you wouldn't want that. That's not going to bring people to our channel.
I wouldn't think so.
No, it's not. But it's good to be back, and it's good to be doing a program again, and I look forward to many, many more. I know we're going to have plenty of things to talk about, and
we haven't really finished with how stupid we are.
Oh, we've got a lot more. Well, that's probably going to be a topic that we'll be revisiting many, many times.
Yeah, I mean,
All right, well, folks, we want to thank you for joining us. On behalf of Walter, this is Ralph, and thank you so much. Again, our YouTube channel is The Democracy Savers.